Well, hello, Secretary Wormuth. It's wonderful to have you here at AUSA at our Defense News booth. I know that you have been very busy the last couple of days, seeing what industry has to offer at the show, hearing from soldiers, and I'm sure you are learning a lot. So going into AUSA, what kinds of things were you looking for from industry?
Well, I think, we're looking for close collaboration with us, continuing to work with our soldiers on the soldier touch points. And I definitely saw that. Almost every vendor I met with, was just coming from a soldier touch point or going to a soldier touch point in the near future. Looking for an emphasis on open architectures. Definitely saw a lot of that. I think that message is being heard. Looking, frankly, to see, our partners in industry team with each other. In a lot of cases with these types of systems, it's rare that one company is going to be able to bring it all on their own. So I saw a lot of good collaboration among industry teams. And then, I also was really impressed, frankly, with how much industry is trying to do, I think, to support our Ukrainian friends and really to try to help them find solutions, in real time.
Okay. Yeah, talk about that a little bit more, because that's something that, we were observing as well. The industry is really coming with answers to solving some of the problems that could help Ukrainians to fight better. So what are some of the things, just generally, that you're seeing from the showroom floor that kind of answer some of the things that Ukrainians are asking for or could need, maybe things that they haven't even thought of yet that could be helpful?
Yeah, I would say, I saw, for example, instances where they are working on, being able to make javelins, range even farther, for example. So that was great to see. I saw the Vampire system, which basically takes, an existing sort of pickup truck and puts weapon systems on top of that already exist. And basically those trucks obviously can, move very, very quickly so that they're not targeted. That was great to see. And then I saw, a couple of great industry partners who are just looking at how can they increase their production capacity here in the United States to be able to, build more munitions more quickly.
Absolutely.
And investing their own dollars, not waiting necessarily for the Army or another part of DoD to do that.
Yeah. And aside from Ukraine, the Army is driving fast and hard towards 2030 to get a wide variety of modernized systems across the finish line. So in terms of what you're seeing from AUSA, we've got some big competitions coming up, of course. But are you liking what you're seeing in terms of innovation, in terms of, you talked about partnerships already, but we're seeing a lot of incorporation of things like AI. What are some of the things that you're seeing that you think will help the modernization efforts go a little bit faster and more smoothly, potentially?
Yeah, one of the things that I saw, speaking of AI, was, Boeing has an effort underway called the Mission Accelerator, which is really looking at, something I think a lot of people consider to be a little bit unsexy, which is logistics, but, really leveraging predictive analytics to try to help us do logistics more efficiently, more quickly, and was really intrigued by the work that they were doing there. I think, that kind of tool would be very helpful to us. Also saw, for example, with some of the companies that are working on OMFV with us, saw really great examples of teaming, but also a lot of emphasis on using digital engineering and digital design to really, help us understand and design in a cost-effective way before we get to that point in the process. So pretty excited about some of what I saw there too.
Yeah, and lots of systems that I think make it easier on the warfighter too, in general, I think.
Yeah, things like, having essentially, tablets that soldiers could potentially, take out of the vehicle, and that are just very intuitive, I think, and user-friendly.
Yes, very cool to see all of these things. What have you learned from speaking to a wide soldier audience over the last few days generally? What are some of your key takeaways from what they're messaging to you?
Well, I think, I've heard a lot from soldiers about recruiting. Lots of soldiers have good ideas, which is fantastic. I actually just came earlier today from a lunch with, we have a program called the Leader Solarium where we bring together captains and first sergeants and things like that to get their good ideas. And I had 2 great ideas just from the table of soldiers that I was sitting with, and I think there were probably 50 tables in that ballroom. So if every table's got 1 or 2 good ideas, that would be fantastic. I mean, for example, the folks at my table were talking about, it's great that you have this talent marketplace that, lets people pick their assignments. Why don't you do something like that for mentoring, because a lot of younger soldiers, I think, really are thirsty for mentoring for their careers.
Absolutely. That's an excellent idea. Love to see how those get implemented over the years. So we've got less than 3 months in calendar year 2022. So what are you looking toward in terms of accomplishing before closing out the year for the Army? I know we're anticipating some announcements like potentially a new future long-range assault aircraft. But what do you have your eye on as you close out the year?
Well, I think, on that particular competition, Flora, that is a big one, and we need to get it right. So we are, that I would say is going to be a conditions-based decision, right. Not a calendar-based decision. We're going to take the time we need to get that right. And then, looking ahead, I think we have a big year coming up, obviously, in 23 with all of the prototypes that we want to try to get rolled out. So I really just want to make sure that we're working closely with industry and our CFTs and ASALT to keep things on schedule. We have a few programs where we're working out some kinks here and there. I'm confident from having talked to our industry partners today that they have their A teams on those programs.
Okay.
So, I think we're on a pretty good path to get through the end of the calendar year.
Okay. And then all the way through FY23, you have, a huge benchmark, I think, that you talked about before. You have 24 systems that you're trying to get into the hands of soldiers by the end of FY23. So in some cases, what does that mean? Getting in the hands of soldiers can mean different things. So if you could just highlight a few things that will happen in terms of getting these signature systems into the hands of soldiers in FY23. Does that mean some may get a prototype and they'll be evaluating, or is it more of a fielding? How do we think about that?
Sure. Well, I think, most of the 24 are going to be prototypes. So, for example, something like PRISM, or certainly the long-range hypersonic weapon. As you know, we have the ground equipment for long-range hypersonic weapon is with its unit, and they're being able to train on it. The actual weapon itself will be the prototype. But something like mobile protective firepower, we are actually going to be starting to begin fielding. So you'll see a lot of prototypes next year, but you'll have IVAS out, you'll have MPF out, so it's a bit of a mix.
Yes, okay. Just to switch gears a little bit, so the doctrine came out at the show. It was a great accomplishment. It's now officially doctrine and no longer a warfighting concept. And there was an annex in there on contested logistics. So can you talk about what the Army is going to do to continue to evaluate and look at how to manage logistics in a contested environment? The acknowledgement that logistics, you can't just go along unprotected. You're going to have to figure out how to do that from port to port. And I think in your speech you talked about how you had tasked General Daly with Army Materiel Command to look at how to manage all of the logistics and sustainment in the Pacific, for instance. All of that goes, without saying that you're likely going to have to deal with a contested environment. So how are you approaching getting after that?
Yeah, well, I think there's a number of different pieces to that, Jen. I would say, first and foremost, one of the big pieces is going to be the initiative that I've asked General Daly to lead, which is really focused on the Indo-Pacific, which is where contested logistics, I think, is going to be particularly difficult because of the distances involved. So we really want to partner with industry, partner with the commercial sector to see what we can do, how we can leverage autonomous distribution, more energy efficient combat systems. So that's really going to be try to collect all of the good ideas, learn from our war games, and really have a serious effort focused on contested logistics. But there are other pieces to it. Again, I think, there are technology pieces. Where can we leverage artificial intelligence? General Daly is a big, not just advocate for better use of predictive data analytics, but he is doing it already in some of the other, when it comes to Army's infrastructure, we're doing a lot using predictive analytics. Okay. And then we also, I think, need to be exercising in a way that reflects the reality of how contested the domain is going to be for logistics. So I think we've got to, the Army has been, I think, a leader in this area, but we've got to do more really testing. How are we going to get things from fort to port, in a contested way? How are we going to do workarounds on the fly? A lot of times our war games just assume that all of that is going to be smooth. We need to start exercising from the vantage point of it's going to be anything but smooth.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to wrap it up, when you come back here in a year, what are you hoping to say that the Army has accomplished? So what are your critical goals in the coming year?
Yeah, well, I think our critical goals are getting those 24 in 23, out into the field, whether it's in prototype or whether it's in early fielding, and trying to work closely with industry to make sure that whatever bumps and hurdles we may encounter, we actually get through. And then, of course, it's going to be, turning to some of those other bigger decisions, like the down select for operationally manned fighting vehicle, for example.
It's an exciting year.
Yeah, a lot going on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure.